Hi guys and happy Friday. Today's conversation is also a stitch, but with William all the way from the US. And by the size of the podcast, you can already imagine how wonderful the conversation went and that we just couldn't stop sharing voice notes with each other. It's almost an hour long, so please grab a cup of coffee or go for a good walk in the good weather and enjoy the conversation. The conversation is about understanding the difference between mastery and commodifying your skills. So we started off understanding how weather has made people become more or less ambitious, understanding how they perceive the world and what they look at. From there, we did digress towards understanding a little bit more about capitalism and how that underpins most of the discussion that we were doing. I am not an advocate of capitalism, but I do believe it really shapes a lot of the decisions we do. And William thinks a little bit more holistically, so it was wonderful to see both of our opinions coming together and having a nice, healthy discussion. And Michael also came in just for a brief moment to share his opinion, and I was very glad that he did. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. What do you think about this podcast? So without any further ado, here's the first voice note.
Ahad, I was talking with my partner recently about how it's interesting that it seems like cold weather climates seem to produce more, let's just say, kind of uptight cultures. And warmer weather climates seem to produce more laid back cultures. And what I mean by that is, like, when it's really cold, you have to get stuff done or you'll die. And if it's really hot, you have to kind of be careful not to do too much or you'll die. I'm being hyperbolic, but and then that kind of translates into this, this, like, maybe at least the perception of like a work ethic. Cold weather climate people the cultures from cold weather climates seem to be, on time, deliver, send the goods. And warmer weather climates seem to be much more relaxed about the whole thing. And obviously, I don't know if that's true. It could just be kind of an illusion, or maybe it's just like a very broad strokes generalization with some element of truth to it. I don't know. But it had me kind of pondering this impulse that I think a lot of people feel, and I don't know if it's unique to the United States or how unique to the United States it is, maybe. But it's this impulse to, kind of professionalize everything that we enjoy doing, anything that we're good at. It's like the highest goal one can achieve is to be a professional, to get paid to do the thing, and you can see expressions of that in, like in my industry, the joke is that, somebody bought me a camera for Christmas and now I'm a professional and I need a website. But I think, it kind of happens everywhere. You do something, people praise you for it, and then you start immediately thinking, could I sell this thing? Will people pay me for this? And I think that's just kind of an interesting phenomenon, that I'm sure it has, a lot of different explanations, and there's probably no one explanation that really sums all of it up. And it's also probably both a good and a bad thing, in a bunch of different ways. And I thought that you're a smart guy. You've got interesting insights in all sorts of things. And if you were there in this conversation with my partner and I, you probably would have had a lot to say about it. So um, I thought I'd send you a voice note and see what you thought. Do you feel that impulse? What's your perspective on that?
Oh my God, William, this is ironic and funny in a way that you came up with this topic, and at the same time, I was just talking to my wife about our planning to Japan at the time of this voice note, and how she is a wonderful planner, and she makes this meticulous word file with everything written in it, of the plans, the days, what we need to do, which tickets we need to buy, and then I update it with a Google Maps link, which basically makes a tour from our hotel, a walking tour from our hotel to all the sites she wants to see, and also update the links, update the locations with their payment or their tickets links, so that we can just click on that to make it work. So once we prepared this, I was like, you know what? It is quite an effort to do this, and not many people do this. Imagine trying to sell this. People will be willing to buy this for a couple of dollars, knowing that they have a 2.5 week or 3 week itinerary to Japan with everything in it. A walking tour, all the good sites, links to find everything you need to find, etc., etc. And then I hear your voice note about how we try to professionalize or commoditize, I think that's a better word, commodify anything and everything we're good at. And I have my own qualms about it, because I work as a contractor, I work as an entrepreneur of sorts, right? An entrepreneur of services. So I'm constantly thinking about this, that how can I professionalize or commodify my service as a coach, or commodify my service as a data consultant. And sometimes I forget that some things I like to do just because they're fun. I even tried to commodify my gaming in a way. I love FIFA, or EA Sports as it's called this year, and I actually tried to compete in a tournament to win some prizes on it. And I was like, I'm making it do a job. This was something I did for fun and I was good at. Why am I taking on this extra stress? That is a bit of an outlier in my opinion, because yeah, you want to play a tournament because you want to be the best, not just about the money, but yeah, the money doesn't hurt, right? So it is quite interesting to hear your voice note about this, and how I do not have an answer to this. Why do people do it? I do have opinions on how and why I do it. I feel like it's the propaganda that does come out from the West about, if you're good at something, never do it for free, or like be so good that people are willing to pay you for it, etc., etc. And I think that's where this model comes from. And I'm surrounded by people, I think, who are also in their hustling lives, like in the hustling phase of their lives. So they also try to just make a quick win here and there, that if I do this, we can make money. If I do that, we can make money. Oh, let's try to run a YouTube or TikTok algorithm using AI and make non-stop videos from AI just so we can commodify the channel, for example. And I'm like, but do you even like to do it? He's like, I don't care. I need to make money. I'm like, yeah, but what is the end goal of making money? I think one of the best things about living in Europe is that you don't really need to worry about that money aspect. Here, well-being is so important that if you have a job and if you're making good amount of money to survive, you're surviving, you're fine. You don't need to rush and be ambitious and like try to do more than what's needed to survive. But in the US, I've heard it's something else. The American dream and this elusive concept of like, becoming rich, or I wanted to say richdom, but that's not even a word. But this illusion of being rich and a millionaire and a billionaire, I think that's what makes people so sympathetic towards rich people as well. If you talk about taxation laws and how some people defend rich people, saying that no, You shouldn't be taxing the rich more than you tax us because they have this elusive dream or ambition that they might become rich one day. It could also be with the fact, as you mentioned in the start of the conversation, that people in colder climates are more robotic of sorts, more colder, more getting stuff done, while people in warmer climates are a bit more community-based and having fun and all of that stuff. So you guys in the cold were fighting against nature, so nature, so it was so difficult. As you said, you need to survive or you die if you don't work for it. And as you said it yourself, I think in the warm environment as well, we would need to do the same, or else we would die from heat. But you can survive from heat a little bit by just doing less. However, I actually sometimes think in the other direction as well. So when I talk to people about this, and I'm like, okay, there's a solution to cold very easy. You can only just keep putting on layers and layers and layers and you're fine, right? No matter how cold it is, you can get layers and layers and layers. But what do you do if there's warmth? You can't take off layers. After a moment, you're not wearing anything anymore. And yet it's very unbearably hot. Then what do you do? So just a little digression about this. I do not know where I fall in this line. Going back to the topic about professionalizing everything, I think your partner has a really good point about people doing this. And I think my thoughts are these, that we're brainwashed in accomplishing so much. And I think in the US, specifically in the US, your identity is attached to your work. You said it yourself, I think, in your voice note, that, hey, I'm a photographer and I got a camera as a gift, so I need to set up a website now. No, but why are you a photographer? Why is that your identity? I'm assuming you said that because I'm right now in the middle of the conversation. I can't go back and listen to it. But our identities, not just in the US, I think, in the West as well, in general as well, but that's because the West propagated this narrative that you as a person are only as important as your job. And this also is a little bit of how a capitalist society is set up, because a capitalist society is set up to gauge value from the contribution you can make. So if you are a photographer or you're a high earning potential of any kind, you automatically bring more value to the table. So hence, that is what you are. I'm an investment banker, I'm a photographer, I'm an analyst, I am a footballer, right? But are you those things? No, you play football. You do photography, you do investment banking, but is that you? Is that the whole of you? No, it's a part of you. And in the Eastern cultures, there's this holistic being that people talk about. That is not true from where I come from, by the way. There's more going towards East Asia. Well, you are a part of everything. Community is also part of you, your work is also part of you, your family is also part of you. But here in the West, your work is quite a big part of you. And then you are a part of you, the individual culture. So I'm bringing the conversation back to the individual level, that it's you and your work, and you're defined by your work. You don't really care about familial responsibilities. You don't really care about anything outside of work in terms of hobbies or anything. And if you have hobbies, they're not part of you, they're hobbies. I like gardening. I like this. I like that. But I do work. I am a consultant. Those phrases already show you what you, and by the way, I'm saying you all the time, but I don't mean you, I mean you as a general person. That's what you value. And I think that has to do with the capitalist underpinning of our society. And I disagree with it. I always go to people in meetups and I ask them, I'm like, can you talk to me today without mentioning your job? Or can you introduce yourself without talking about what you do as work? But then going back again to what we started this conversation off with, if you are a professional of any kind and you do it, sure, I will put that aside. I'm a data consultant. I do data consultancy. I'm not a data consultant. I work as a data consultant. I put that aside. That's my day job. But now I'm doing this whole bustle thing that's going on, right? Working as a communicator, having good conversations. So now I say, I am a communicator, but that's also just a part of me. but because this is a side hustle, this is a side project, I'm so excited of doing it that I make it a big part of my identity now. So where does it end? I don't have the answer. I'm also like asking you these questions. Like, where do you draw the line of what is you and what is a part of you and what is your identity? I think those questions, once answered or thought of, maybe would lead to a better understanding of the self. And maybe we can discuss this deeper than with your partner to get their point of view as well. But those are my thoughts on it. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on it, and looking forward to see what you can come up with, because I can imagine you must have a lot to say on the matter, and I'm very, very curious to see what you come up with.
It's funny you mention YouTube and video games, because those were two of the topics that kept coming up in kind of the weird, almost like dystopian future of what it means to like work and, you know, commodify yourself. I like that word. That was a good choice. Because, you know, these are things that like we're just, you know, video games. I mean, as far as being a thing at all, it's not very old, like maybe 40 years if you really, really stretch, you know, and, you know, YouTube is what, 15, 20 years old or something? Is that even true? Anyway, and for a long time, these are things that people just did because they really liked it, you know? And I mean, video games in particular, you know, it was so deeply leisure that it was, you know, denigrated. And I mean, part of me almost thinks that the interest in commodifying video games has some commodifying oneself as a player of video games almost has kind of an underpinning in a history of being seen as, you know, like lazy stuff. And now, you know, I'm not that people are like really conscious of it necessarily, but, you know, now there's this like almost like impulse to push back on this historical idea of it being like a pointless waste of time. It's like, nah, look how much money I made. Look how much money my Twitch stream made. You know, playing a game where a goose harasses farmers or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think there were kind of like two main thrusts to what you were saying, and you know, the first one, or in no particular order, maybe, was the idea that capitalism sort of pushes this out, pushes this into us culturally, and I do think that's true. I don't know if it's by design, though. You know, I think it might be more of like a quirky byproduct, and also maybe one that, given enough time and enough general productivity, might emerge anywhere that there is like a, you know, a centralized currency. You know, we developed currency as kind of like a promissory note of value, like you know, instead of having to keep track of how valuable potatoes were to me versus how valuable fixing cabinets was to you or something. You know, we came up with this like central way to gauge that. And so, I mean, in some ways, we can use, we're inclined to use money to think about the value that we're bringing into the world, you know. And I mean, even for ourselves, I mean, if I just spend a tremendous amount of time working on something, and I just do it mainly for myself, for my own interests, my own immediate entertainment. there's some part of me that wonders, like, what is what is this worth to me? you know, like it feels good and it's fun, but you know what? Like watching TV, binge watching TV is fun. Um, like sleeping in is fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's really good. That's a good thing to do. But there is also kind of this impulse to wonder, like, well, what is this worth to me? Like, was this worth 2 sacks of potatoes? you know. Um, so I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of squishy. I mean, I do think that it's kind of easy to package it under um, under like a side effect of capitalism, but I think it might be more a side effect of just like complex human contexts where where we have um, where we have a lot of our basic needs met and we have free time and we're spending it on something, um, and we also have this sort of like proxy thing that we can use to estimate the value of something we're doing, you know? Um, so I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm agreeing with you that it is it is easy to assign it as a piece of capitalism, but I'm not sure that really tells the whole story of it, or even maybe even most of the story. I don't know. Um, and then the other thing the other I think thrust of what you were saying had to do with identity, which I think is uh, at least on the face of it, I am absolutely in total agreement with. Um, it is easy to get wrapped up into this question of I am what I do. Um, and human beings, I think, are more than what we do, but also maybe simultaneously not. like, like we're in this we're in this body that has this fascinating metacognition where we can think about our thoughts and our feelings and reflect on them and predict the ones we'll have in the future and make changes based on what we have thought in the past and what we want to think in the future. And um, so, I mean, this this sort of fixation maybe on what is my identity. Uh, what does it matter? like, I mean, if I look at my dog, we were actually we had a we were dog sitting for a friend of ours um, over the weekend, and I was watching these two dogs play together, and just kept sort of noticing the ways that they're similar, and then also the ways that they are really quite different, and was thinking about the idea of individuality among dogs. What is like who is Bailey? What is her identity? And I think that we're just kind of maybe a little like high on our own supply, thinking that we're unique in that way. I mean, Bailey is Bailey is what she does. She likes to cuddle, she likes to smell things, she likes to play. She's anxious when I'm gone and relaxed when I'm there. And maybe that's true for us too. Maybe that's actually true at basically every scale. Um, if we could get up close enough to a colony of ants, and we could look at the way the individuals may be differentiated from one another, would we say this is this is a worker ant, or would we say, well, that's not who this ant is? I don't know. I'm oftentimes kind of fascinated by how we carve out this exception for human beings, which to me a lot of the time seems based on very little more than our ability to think about it, and our relative inability to tell whether or not other animals are thinking about it too. So, um, where was I going? Maybe I should loop in my partner. Maybe I should send your voice message to Michael and see what he has to say about this.
I would love to hear from Michael and take his opinion as well about what he thinks on the matter. So do feel free to take his opinion, send it to me. It can be like a three-way conversation. I would love to try that out as well. So that is, in my eyes, it's sorted. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he says. And to go back to the topic, I think I understand where you're coming from, that it is too easy of a conversation and too easy of an explanation to just put it on capitalism. Maybe it is indeed that we are more productive and we don't need to work for like hours a day to put food on the table. So now we want to do something. However, that doesn't mean we need to commodify ourselves, right? The reason I still defend this point of view that I make is because the birth of the philosopher was the birth of a well-resourced person or man in that matter. What I mean by that is people who were the philosophers that we love reading about, I personally look up to, I love to learn that they had so much original thought and thinking, is because they really didn't have to worry about putting food on the table. These were aristocrats who had all the money and land in the world at whatever point in time they were living, that they could just survive without working. So what they thought was, what a better time, what better would be to, to do something is to think about stuff. So for them, thinking about stuff is very important. And since the birth of capitalism, you notice thinking is not as valuable anymore just by itself. Now it's thinking to bring value. Now anything that we think about has to have value attached to it or it's worthless. And because of this reason, you see this creator economy kicking off. So you tell me that video gaming has become a thing, right? People are not using it for leisure anymore. Now it's about making money out of it. So it's sometimes not even leisure. A lot of streamers and YouTubers are actually now pulling out of this creator economy because they're saying that, oh, it's too much of a burden that I have to go every day stream for a couple of hours. My body hurts, my mind hurts. We're not used to looking at screens so much, but because they took a passion, that's something they were really passionate about, and they thought, what would be the next step? Mastery was not the next step for them. It was commodifying, because in a capitalist society, that's what you're taught. Professionalize, commodify. You love gardening. You love cooking. The next thing for you to do naturally would be, I'm good at it. Maybe I should teach someone, sell it, or make videos about it. But not just get better at it for the sake of getting better at it. I'm not saying you as a person. I'm just saying that you in general, that is a natural next step that we think about, because that's what we are basically primed to think about. Now everything has to attach value to it, and that is the premise that I like to argue upon, and that's why I think it still matters. And I do still get your point of view that it can be something more, and it definitely is something more. Of course, we have just opinions on something, and we are just trying to make sense of the world around us. But I look up to the people in the past, how those who had resources and how they lived their lives. You see some try to expand aggressively, try to conquer more land, more people, because they wanted power. Some were completely happy in their ivory towers and just focused on reaching enlightenment and transcendence of sorts. Some people did it spiritually. Some people did it from a rational point of view, like thinking and trying to make sense of the world around them. People came up with beautiful concepts that we use now, such as capitalism, such as rationalism, such as empiricism. This all was given birth by people who did not have any problems of putting food on the table, who thought that, what else is out there? How can I make sense of the world around me, and how can I improve it? And that is where I look upon when I talk about professionalizing something. Doesn't need to be. We are taught and primed in a very different manner. And that is something I do have qualms about. On to the second point about individuality and its attachment to professionalization of sorts. I think here as well, and it feels like I'm banging the same drum again and again, right? But here as well, this is an illusion that capitalism has built upon us. And this, I will send you a podcast about this, one of my favorite podcasters on philosophy, Stephen West. He talks about this basically. He talks about that in a capitalist society, they give you this illusion of freedom, which works in the benefit of capitalism. So before, when you were in, I think I already mentioned this a little bit, so do apologize if it's a repeat. He mentions that before, when you were working in serfdom, or when you were working in a society that was not capitalist, where you were working under a monarchy or something, even in a democracy, but you were playing part in a machine. You were a farmer, you had to give something up to the government, you were something, you had to do something. You were part of a machine, right? And you needed to be part of that society for the society to survive. But now, you don't need to be part of that society. You're an individual. However, that's just not it. The catch is, look how free you are now. Look at what your parents, what your grandparents, what your ancestors had to go through. They could only work for 8 hours a day as a farmer to put food on the table. But look at you, you can become whoever you want. And do you want to waste your time, this luxury and privilege that you have of being whoever you want, by doing nothing? By just sitting around thinking? By being happy? No, you need to bring value to the table, the value that your ancestors could never think of bringing. Reach for the stars. Try to do the best you can. Try to bring as much value as you can. And that's what burns us out. That's what confuses us. So there's no more external pressure by a monarch or an authoritarian who is trying to tell us to do stuff now. Capitalism and postmodernism has actually convinced us somehow to put the pressure from the inside of us, that no, you need to feel pressured if you don't bring value to the table, if you don't do more. I work enough, to be really honest with you. I'm quite grateful for the amount of money I earn and the value I bring. But for some reason, I'm not content. I still have this side project going in which you are involved with me. I have another side project going about this new startup idea that I want to try out. I want to play professional FIFA, as I've already mentioned. And all of this, I think I've already mentioned in the last voice note. I'm trying to do all of this stuff, but I don't need it. I really don't need it. But I just feel like I'm wasting time. I'm leaving money on the table. I don't want to do this kind of thing. I want to be more productive. But why? Why do I have to be like that? Because once you strip an individual of what it means to be human, in my eyes, it's to be part of a society, you belong to something. It's quite important for us to feel belonged to something, a sense of belonging. And we strip that away in a capitalist society, in an individualistic society. Now it's all about, no, you're your own person. You're self-fulfilling. You're self-sufficient. Try to find your value and your belonging in the work you do. That's your identity. So that you will never feel fulfilled and you will always try to run around. But if you're a good neighbor, if you're a good family member, if you're a good partner, if you're a good father, automatically you would feel more fulfilled. But we never get to there. I talk to people around them and people barely talk to their neighbors anymore. People barely have friends outside the few of their circles, and what they do with them, they want to go out and party with them. They don't want to even have proper conversations with them anymore. And if it is, it's all about, I want this from you, you want this from me, how can we do that? Again, it's transactional. Everything has become transactional. Everything has become a quid pro quo. We're losing the essence of being human, in my eyes. And I think I want to end there, because it is already quite overwhelming for me to go so deep about this. But I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear Michael's thoughts. Let me know what you think about this. And let's bring the conversation back up to how and why are we commodifying and professionalizing every single aspect of our lives.
Hi, Ahad. William and I were just chatting about your conversation, and I think that it's actually probably a fairly small number of people who are actively looking to commodify their hobbies. I suspect it's actually a relatively small number of people that does that, and I wonder if it's not more a trait among people who are either aspiring to get out of traditional professional work or who are kind of already in the arts, where obviously, you have to be commodifying what you do in order to live. But as far as where the impulse comes from, we were talking a little bit about just generally a need in cold weather climates to constantly be active, constantly be thinking about things in terms of their utility. And I'm wondering if it's just not an extension of cold weather climate cultures generally, an extension of strict deadlines, prioritizing tasks, deprioritizing kind of relationships and joie de vivre. And I'm wondering if that isn't kind of an interesting overlap.
Hey, how you doing? I apologize for this in advance, that there is a lot of background noise. So I just want to test if it's actually audible or not. Oh, I think it's pretty good. So thank you so much for your voice note, and welcome to the club. I think it's going to be so much fun to talk to you more about this. But what I wanted to basically add on to what you said was that indeed my opinion came from a sampling bias, because you look at social media, when you look at people trying to commodify their hobby, and people who post on social media already are in minority compared to people who consume on social media, right? So that already tells me that, okay, there is a sampling bias. So I did some research, and there was a links I sent about it, that actually a lot of people do prefer to do side hustles of sorts, and mostly the reason cited is earning more money. So it is indeed the case that people try to learn a new skill, or people try to earn more money, and they prefer to use their hobbies or their skills as a platform to earn more money. If you look at the numbers, around 55+% of Americans either are or want to start a side hustle. So I do think it is becoming more common. So going back to the topic of why this happens, is it cold weather or hot weather? I do not know necessarily if it's cold weather, hot weather, because in Europe, you can argue cold weather, hot weather, right? In the US, it's a bit more difficult, right? Because the whole of US is very thrifty and ambitious and money hungry in a way that I want to commodify everything in the capitalist mindset. But the whole of US is actually not cold. You have one of the biggest economies by state in warmer areas like Texas and San Francisco and California. And I think also recently I'm reading about Arizona becoming a very hot place for people to, hot, pun intended, both hot, like actually weather-wise hot as well, but also in demand these days due to its lower taxes. So I do not know if the cold climate, warm climate argument makes sense here. Maybe it's just a capitalist mindset. In Europe, Northern Europe specifically, I don't think people care much. Yes, they try to commodify what they know, but in Europe, I don't see a lot of people trying to thrift their way or side hustles or commodify their habits. They're just more like, we're earning a job as a job. It is just a way to earn money to actually live my life. And Southern Europe is even more different. They're more laid back, more relaxed. And I do not know if commodifying habits or professionalizing everything, ambition is related to cold weather yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think it's more like it was a cold weather thing in general, to be more physically active. And in warm weathers, you're not that physically active, but that doesn't mean you necessarily need to professionalize your habits or earn more money. I think that's a strictly capitalist thing, strictly capitalist thing, because people in Pakistan are warm, a lot of my friends, and they are also trying to commodify and professionalize a lot of things, not just habits, but I think I already mentioned this, they try to just earn money from everything. They're like, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this, let's try that, let's try to earn money. So I think the root of this debate is more geared towards capitalism rather than towards climates and their impact on people. Because this was quite interesting. I don't know if I've already mentioned this to William, but in Russia, there is the coldest village on earth, basically, the coldest place on earth. And there's a YouTuber there who basically shows how a typical day goes there. And I looked at that typical day and I was shocked. I talked to my wife about it. Most of the day is spent in just staying alive, let alone hobbies, just staying alive. Literally, the guy spends hours cutting wood to burn the wood, to have the house hot enough that they can survive. Takes them hours to get the bath ready, to shower, and that's why they only do it in once a week, right? They have to get their kids ready for school. That takes a long time and a lot of effort, and then they have to cook to eat enough for the night, like for staying warm in the night and like having food, and then the cycle repeats. And I'm like, I told my wife about this. I'm like, is this living? I don't know, but maybe this was living. That you just were so physically active and busy, and you were just trying to survive. That's all you were doing. Right now, I'm in Tokyo at the time of this recording, And here as well, my wife is a planner, and I love this about her. She's a planner, so she plans everything to the T. So when we go out like at 10 in the morning and we come back around 10 in the night. And we're just exhausted afterwards. And then all we just want to do is sleep and then look forward to the next day and go again. And we're so excited while we do all of this stuff. But then we're not thinking about anything else. We're just enjoying life. And that made me realize that in countries like Europe, I don't know about the States, but Europe, regions like Europe, right now you have more time on your hands thanks to the work-life balance that they've provided us. So now you want to do more stuff because you're bored. So again, going back to the topic, it doesn't mean it is a cold weather or a hot weather thing. It is that now you have more disposable income, that you don't need to work to live, that you'd want to fill your time with something. And some people prefer traveling, some people prefer like building, some people prefer creating. And then the natural next step to it in a capitalist society, as I mentioned before, is that okay, I'm making this kind of stuff. Can I professionalize it? Can I get some money out of it? So that helps me again make more time to do more stuff. And in this cycle, this hedonic treadmill, people actually forget that they were doing this to get out of the rat race, and now they're suddenly back in the rat race. You are your own boss and everything, but now you're working 80 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, and you're happy just because you're like, I set the schedule, but is there a point? So I think that's some of my thoughts on it. I really think cold weather, hot weather affects on a cultural level, but this professionalizing it is really a capitalist problem rather than anything else.
So while we wait for Michael to respond to this, um, I wanted to maybe try and kind of I don't know, rein us back in a little bit, because I think we've drifted a bit, which is okay. We never really quite know where this is going to go or how. Bailey, you okay, baby? Is it so hot? You want to start a side hustle? Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Um, yeah, we started the conversation. The idea of like cold weather, hot weather really started because um, I was thinking, how does this uh, how does this relate to this impulse? And I think that it may not really. I mean, I think that you're right that it is probably more closely related to just like capitalistic identity, whether conscious or not. Um, but I also think that it might be less uh, less intuitive than it seems to be. And I wanted to give kind of like an anecdote um, to demonstrate what I mean by that, because as the conversation goes, and a lot of the stuff, a lot of the links that you had shared were good and interesting data about um, like people's financial situations and how that might be influencing whether or not they want to try and start a side hustle. But I don't think a side hustle really quite captures this idea of commodifying our interests. Because a lot of people in that side hustle are not. It's not like they're like, I just really love going and picking up people's Chipotle for them. You know, we're talking about people who like made somebody a candle for their birthday, and people were like, "Wow, that's a nice candle." And now all of a sudden they're like, "Wow, do I need an Etsy store? Am I a candle maker now?" Um, and come on, baby, come on, keep up, baby. I know it's so hot. It's so hot, and you have such a dark coat. Okay, sorry. Um, Bailey is out here. It's like, speaking of hot weather, cold weather, we have just decided that we're into our hot season now, and Bailey is not happy about it. Um, so I wanted to share this quick anecdote. I have a client who she's a mom. They have obviously a very comfortable income, and that's obvious because they can afford me on a yearly basis, and also like their house is in a nice part of town, and it's really got a big footprint, and it's obviously really well adorned inside and everything. And she has been. I think she's a lawyer, or maybe she's a some kind of a professional, some kind of like high level professional work like that. And she's been doing that for more than a decade. But recently, she has started to sell cake. She made some cakes, and people liked them, and she started posting them on social media, and people on social media were like, "Oh, that's a really nice cake. I would buy that cake." And so she's like, "Okay, you can buy that cake," you know. And to me, this really sort of runs counter to the idea that this urge to commodify our interests is a knock-on effect of um, people's financial situation. Like this woman is arguably in a far better position financially um, than like pretty cakes could ever make her. Um, and I mean, no, and I mean, in all fairness, Americans have a ton of debt, and maybe what I'm seeing is why she's in lots of debt. Um, Maybe I'm only seeing it because she's in lots of debt, and that's she keeps getting into more debt because of me. I don't know. It's hard to say for sure, but that's not a that's not it's not exactly a unique anecdote. It seems like there is an urge from all over the place to commodify what we're doing, almost as though we have this kind of skill tree, and as you progress through that skill tree, you eventually necessarily hit a point where you must commodify. That's the next stop on the skill tree. Um, and and I think that also kind of runs counter. Like Michael and I disagree on this. Michael thinks that this is a sampling error from like all the people that I know and I follow and I pay attention to are all artists, creative people, and those people are going to have a predisposition for commodifying that kind of thing. But I don't think that's true. I think that there is something else going on, and it may well be related to capitalistic mindset or identity or something, um, where the next logical advancement is commodification. So I guess we'll just I wanted to try and sort of like pull us back a little bit because I think that we're getting into the weeds a little bit. Yeah. Who's wrong? What's wrong with the weeds? We'll see what Michael has to say.
Hey, Michael, long time. This is going to be a very interesting stitch because it has a gap of like weeks in the middle, even months in the middle, because I was out and about and I left you hanging. So I do apologize for that. So I do want to continue this conversation because it was interesting, especially the example and the anecdotes you were giving. And I appreciate that you already can see the sampling bias that you can have, but I don't even want to go into that. I think there's even a much simpler answer here, in my opinion. Because as you said yourself, that it is an inert or in thing from the inside that it's a skill tree that is the max you've gone now what you can do, and this maximization, basically what I hear is maximization. You're like, okay, what else can I do? Can I do something else better? Okay, I'm a lawyer, I'm a successful lawyer, maybe I don't have debt, I'm a successful lawyer, and I'm acing it at lawyering, and now I like to do these things for fun on the side just because lawyering might be boring or might be too monotonous for me maybe, so I want to bake these really wonderful cakes. And then she bakes these wonderful cakes and she posts on social media. She'll be like, oh look, I'm skillful, I'm diversifying my skills. And someone goes like, oh, you should sell these, I would buy these. And she's like, well, why not? Because that is the problem with the capitalist mindset of why not. And to give you a very good example, let's not talk about people who aren't rich, because that was the studies, right? Side hustles are needed because people are trying to pay debt and everything. Let's talk about rich people. Have you ever seen one rich person who goes like, you know what, I've earned this much, I'm happy? I am yet to see one who goes like, you know what, I have enough. No, I've always seen them investing in more places, investing in new things. I know myself personally quite a few rich people in Pakistan, in India, who are like filthy rich, I'll be honest with you. But they're still grinding. And I'm like, you're so rich, why are you grinding? Maybe not physically grinding, but mentally and financially they're grinding. They're like, you know what, we have one factory running of clothing and we have one business running on telecom, but let's see if I can get into restauranteering. Let's see if I can get into something. I'm like, but why? They're like, why not? The answer should be always, why not? That's the capitalist mindset. If you have an option to sell something, if you have the money, and if there is demand, why don't you want to supply to it? But that is the maximization problem we're stuck in, right, William? The problem is, I loved that you said it in a way that, okay, this is a skill tree thing, Ahad. Like, we have a skill tree and we reach the end of the skill tree and we're like, okay, the natural next step is to now commodify it to get to the next step of the skill tree. But is that so? You can have a craft and you can hone it forever without getting a single money out of it. And you can spend shitloads of money on it. And that should be perfectly fine, but that is not. We will never spend on doing stuff again and again. We'll only spend stuff to get started on. And once we get started on it, then we're going to start slowly trying to reduce the amount of money we're putting in, or try to see if we can get money out of it. A good example of this would be, a lot of times people work out, they pay lots of money to the gym to go work out, right? But those who become really good at working out start coaching other people to work out, right? And they still go to the gym, they still pay money, but now they're trying to coach other people, or they're trying to at least see, they're like, I'm good at it, why not, right? Same thing, why not? I know my friend who loves dancing, and he says, I will go and teach people dancing. I'm like, why? He's like, I love dancing. I want to take out time of the day to dance. Why not just dance with other people and get paid to do it? I'm like, but you like dancing. Do you like teaching dancing? He's like, why not? Dancing is dancing. So do you understand? Like, this is the recurring theme that I hear all the time about why not? Like, because the capitalist mindset always tells you why not. Hey, I have 2 phones. I have a laptop. I have a gaming system, I have a big monitor screen, I have a Walkman player, I have headphones, I have all of that stuff. And then this this thing comes out. It's called the Steam Deck. I don't know if you know that, or if you're into that. It's a portable computer, just like a laptop, but now it's handheld like a Game Boy, and it can run all your computer games on it. It can also mirror my PS5 on it. It can also mirror my Xbox on it. So I can play all the games on the comfort of my couch without having to have a screen in place or something, and it's portable, all of that stuff. And my wife was like, you already have a PS5, you already have a computer. You already have a phone where you can play these things if you want to. Why do you want this? I'm like, why not? It makes my life easier. But that's the capitalist mindset. They just want to keep giving you stuff that you might be like, yeah, why not? It will add. But does it really add value to your life? Does hustling or earning more money or trying to get more add more value to your life? And that's, I think, the axiom I try to live with, right? Okay, if I do this decision, if I make this thing happen right now, if I try to hustle with Wassel, I like that rhyme, by the way. If I try to hustle with this thing that I'm trying to do, right? I'm running around, talking and speaking and podcasting, all of that stuff, and I'm not getting any money out of it. I'm spending a lot of money on it. And I'm like, okay, why am I doing this? Do I want to become famous, like an influencer or something? And for me, for now, is that if I can just get enough money out of it that I can pay the bills that goes into it, I'm content. The rest is positive. I don't need it, but it's positive, because what I get out of it is not just a source of income, but I really enjoy the conversations I do with people. I don't enjoy all of them, I'll be honest with you. I don't enjoy a lot of the conversations I do just because I need guests, but I want to get to a point where I'll be like, you know what, I'm just going to have conversations that I like to do, not the conversations that I have to do. And if the bills get paid and I get to do that, that is the end goal I want to be at. But you never know. Maybe in the future I'll be like, hey, want to write a book? I'll be like, why not? They'll be like, hey, you want to do some speaking gigs? I'll be like, why not? And I could fall into the same trap maybe. So I don't know. But this why not is the crux of the problem. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say as well. Like, it's just a reframing of the mindset. You're saying that it's a skill tree, and to get better, you might need to commodify it. And for me, it's like, I don't know. I think it's just that we are trained to believe that that is the logical next step. And I don't think it is. I think you can hone your craft without commodifying it. You don't even need to hone your craft if you don't like it. You can just be an amateur or a meteor, as we call it here, forever. You don't need to be an expert at everything. There are multiple things you can do, but we only focus on this one because that's the one we are drilled into belief in a way. And I think the weather thing and everything, we can just pause that for now and just focus on this. I think this is the topic where it's naturally going. But if you feel like I'm drifting again, feel free to correct the course and we go back to the other topic.
Ahad, I'm a millennial in the United States without children and with disposable income. And you think I don't know what a Steam Deck is? Come on, man. All right, I'm kidding. Mostly. um, first of all, welcome back. There's a lot in there, and I will say that from where I'm sitting, it feels a little like what you're saying is kind of like that whole, like, to a hammer, everything is a nail. Um, like, this idea is just purely a capitalist phenomenon, and um, I am definitely in agreement that I think that that's an important piece of the puzzle. Although I think that maybe there is a larger discussion about capitalism and what that means from the various angles and like scales that you want to talk about it from, like, are we talking about capitalism in terms of the well-defined, codified economic and political system? Or are we talking about more like the emergent capitalism as it relates to just like broad concepts of supply and demand? Because I think that in the emergent sense of the concept, I think you're gonna see some version of this in um, in any system with enough people and people who have time and enough money to um, express their interests freely. And that kind of brings me back to something you had said, earlier. I can't remember exactly how you said it, but the gist of what you were saying was, people want to seek to commodify instead of seeking mastery. And I think that brings up an interesting point, because in a way, we have so many people. There are just so many people on this planet, and so many of them are good at so many things. Um, the idea of mastery is a little unattainable. There's a lot of different reasons to want to do something. Like, there are some things that I do because I just really like just the physical doing of it. Like, when I'm out in my garden, I'm usually actively enjoying, crouching down in the dirt and putting something in the ground, or like pruning a tomato plant or something. But there's other things that I do that I think a lot of people do that are, we find them interesting because of the outcome. We like to see that people appreciate something that we do, or we want to impress somebody, and that is, it's not a commodity aspect. That's not a capitalism thing. That's just a thing that some people have. We want to feel like we did a good job, and one of the best ways to see that we did a good job in some places is that somebody liked it. you know, um, and with as many people as there are, and how well connected those people are, and how good at so many things people are, the pursuit of mastery as its own thing is kind of deflating. like like if I want to make a loaf of bread, because it would feel good to have to look at my bread and say, wow, this is good bread, and then for a friend to eat it and say, wow, this is good bread, or to show it to my community online and they say, good job, you did a good job on that loaf of bread. you know um, if I am focused on mastery for mastery's sake, I might really not get what I want out of that. you know um, and that sort of brings me to that idea that I was mentioning earlier. This, like, money becomes like this like proxy indicator. It's a substitute in a way for mastery. Um, we're not. You don't have to be the best at something. You just need to be good enough to impress the people who like what you're doing, and that's kind of a shortcut. And now, that's not to say that there is not a certainly a place and a time to say, like, hey, mastery for mastery's sake. Especially if we're talking about things like hard science, like physics or something. But that's not the kind of thing that most people are commodifying. Most people are commodifying their creativity or their perspective or their their ideas, so the idea of mastering something, that's confusing. That's confusing and it's amorphous, but commodifying something, it sort of solves that problem. And it allows something that is nebulous in its shape, it gives it a kind of form, and it allows somebody to say, I've achieved this thing, even if the achievement doesn't really need the commodity. Like my example before, this lawyer, whatever she is, probably doesn't need to make cakes. She probably doesn't need the money, but she wants to, and and maybe it would be great to be the best baker in the world, sure, but that's probably not realistic. I mean, if I'm sitting there saying like, boy, I enjoy making cakes and I enjoy people enjoying the cakes I've made, the idea of being one of the best cake makers in the world is unrealistic. But the idea of being a cake maker that 600 people on the internet are just really impressed by, that's satisfying. That's attainable, you know. And I don't. And so I think I think that that's related to capitalism, but I don't think that it is fully explained by capitalism. And I mean, at least not the codified economic system of capitalism. It is sort of explained to an extent by the more emergent idea of capitalism. But I think that it's better explained by just how many people there are and how many things those people are good at, how well connected those people are to each other, and just like how many people, how many individual actors there are in the system. Commodity becomes a useful substitute for the satisfaction that can come from a sense of mastery in an otherwise simpler system.